From my side, I can say everything is fine. We're trying to do our best as youth within the Congo. We are trying to do a lot of voluntarism, like voluntary work in different ways. But my only concerns comes when.
I'm sorry, Elali. Just to remind everyone, the meeting is over.
Yes,
okay, so this is just an extension for those who are staying behind and chatted. So it's formally over. Okay, so I didn't mean to interrupt.
Exactly, it's just
go ahead.
It's just a one. Okay. No, it's just a personal concern, like to discuss with you.
Yes.
I know the meeting is over.
Good.
Actually, from my recent experience within the US, I think there is a big deal. The relationship between Africans and African Americans. How can we bring those two cultures together? Because I think on my side, I try to approach some of them, talking to them about the culture of Africa or how we live in Africa. So their mind is all about Africa is poor. There's nothing good coming from Africa. They think that we are so primitive that we can't tell them anything. I found that very disappointing on my side, being a Black and African. And I'm just so anxious about it. I don't know. How can we come together, we as African and the African American, all together, try to understand who we really are, our history, and how can we still like upgrade ourselves together? Did you think in that way? Like, is there any solution? Or maybe I missed, somebody suggested something in that way.
No,
Hello.
I think in that way.
Hi.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Mokhtar. I just want to add a few words, on what she has mentioned already, or her observation. Actually, recently, I had like a close encounter with a young boy, an African American that lives here in the United States. And to my dismay, I was really surprised. The words that came out from his mouth, a young boy was in that from the impression that I've gotten is that Africa is a nation, ravaged, with by war, disease, insurgency, so many things. Africa is a place full of animals and this and what have you. So I was actually surprised that at school or their parents or grandparents have not been able to enlighten them about or give them the true picture about what Africa is. So I think there is a big, very, very big gap that needs to be bridged between Africa, especially people like me, who don't have the citizenship, and actual African American that have been here. So, and another observation is that most of these African Americans, actually, from my encounter with them, is that they look down on Africans. Truly, here. I don't know why they have that belief, but the way we perceive them is that, yes, something is wrong somewhere. There is this superiority complex which they have, which it's not only me that observe, but a number of Africans that came from Africa observe that, oh, these African Americans. I thought we should be more like friends, like brothers and sisters. But to our dismay, they look down on us. We don't know the reason why. So I was really, really surprised when I had those things coming from a young boy, which indicates that this is what is happening across America. Because if something could come out from a young boy, then think about the matured ones that have been here. So definitely, I really agree with you, madam. I don't know what's happening. That gap has to be bridged. So I don't know what Osiru will say about it. Thank
you. Yeah, one of the things we are doing, and we can do more of, is develop materials, historical content that clearly outlines the synergy between Africans and African Americans. What do I mean by that? I mean, there have been African Americans who travel to Africa to learn, to live, to support our struggle in Africa. Like, you know, people like Malcolm X, for example, has been to Africa. Maya Angelou's been to Africa. There are many greats been to Africa. So we need to start talking about these things so they can learn about it and know that their heroes were also our heroes, and they also traveled to Africa to learn and to connect. We also need to talk about how Africans supported African Americans in times of struggle. So we need to start articulating all these things in a material, in a document where everyone can read and appreciate this this camaraderie that existed. I think it will go a long way. The second thing is to share our African knowledge widely. You know, so what we're trying to do here with developing courses, we need to make sure that African Americans come and take those courses because they are Africans too, right? That's their heritage too. So they need to come learn about African culture. And then also we need to be learning the African American culture because they've taken the African culture, brought it here, and they've changed it. So we need to tap into that. We need to learn African American struggle, African American history, and we need to start spending time with each other. 3 is actually not just spending time, but also doing business with each other. There are a lot of African American entrepreneurs here. They need to be exporting to Africa, right? And we can also export over here to them. So, for example, we have some automakers. Well, one idea that I've always thought about and I would love to act upon is to have African Americans go to Africa to buy cars. We have auto manufacturers now, right, in Ghana and in Nigeria. So why can't not just African Americans, also Africans in diaspora as well, from the continent, you know, they can go and start patronizing Africans as well, like buying cars that are made in Africa and drive them here proudly. The same way we buy German cars, we buy, you know, Japanese cars, we can buy African cars, and we can love it.
Yeah.
So a number of things we can do, and we just need to, like I said earlier, create committees and start looking at how we can start taking action along these lines. We have so much to celebrate. We can also start highlighting some of the collaborations happening now. If you look at the music industry today, you see some collaborations. So it's happening also. So we need to bring these things to the forefront and appreciate them and say, oh, look at what we are doing together. You know, look at P Square collaborating with Chris Ross? Yeah, right. We can. I mean, Rick Ross, right? We can highlight those things, and there's a lot of collaborations happening. We see our actors acting in African American movies and vice versa. We should encourage more of those kind of things. And I think as we do those, we see the divide will begin to be bridged.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Osiri. I think you have pinpointed those points, and I think a lady just texted, and she talks about music, entertainment industry, and what have you. I think, yeah, she's absolutely right. Those are the key areas that we need to focus on. Already, I know there have been some sort of a collaboration between Africa and Hollywood in terms of you know, bringing in our culture together. So many movies have been made. So yeah, truly, I agree with her what she has said. But it is not all that that bad, because I met a number of African Americans here that are very enthusiastic about visiting Africa, about their heritage, that they can't wait to see them travel to Africa. So they, I mean, over time, they've been longing to find an opportunity to travel to Africa, you know, to see their roots, you know, or something like that. I mean, they have the passion to, you know, to embrace African
That's
culture,
right.
and what have you. So it's not that all bad, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, actually, and I'm going to call Madame Onoma shortly here. But you know, actually, there's a lot of great collaborations happening. You know, a lot of good things happening. You know, let's not forget our brains are wired to amplify problems, and we need to be cognizant of that. You know, and our brain. I forgot to mention this to the group to the bigger audience. You know, it's easier to get addicted to problems, and that's why we oftentimes talk about problems, because your brain rewards you to talk about problems. It's easy to talk about problems, and when you talk about problems, it is you think like you are doing something, but you are not doing anything. You know, you are just perpetuating the problem by talking about it. And the brain, you know, rewards you for doing that, and you know you are happy brain wise to talk about it, and you keep doing it. So we need to be aware of that and shift our talk from, yes, identifying the problem, and then quickly talk about how, not just why. We already know why. We know why, how. And then in trying to figure out the how, let's figure out, okay, what's happened? How has it been solved already? And then when you ask, how has it been solved already? You begin to see all these examples. Wow, look at these collaborations that are happening. Look at Ghana, for example. We have many African Americans who've moved to Ghana to live there. I mean, it's right there in our face. I mean, they want to connect. So we need to actually get our act together, frankly speaking. Africans need to get their act together, right, and welcome our brothers and sisters who want to come back home, either to live permanently or to visit. So the onus is on us, you know, as Africans on the continent, to prepare the way for them to come and enjoy.